watching Veracity Hill. Here is your host, Dr. J.
Well, a good day to you, and thanks for joining us here for another episode of Veracity Hill, where we are striving for truth on debate preparation. I wanted to share some insights today on the things that I do to prepare for upcoming debates. I have a debate coming up on Friday, more about that in a moment. But I wanted to share with you some good practices. These are things you could commonly find on Google, how to prepare for debate, but also share some tips and just personal advice, things that I do in my preparation for theological debates. Maybe you could learn some things from this. I would also be willing to learn from you if you've got any tips and practices. In the day that we live in, there are so many debates on the internet that people feel like they can just debate anybody. But really, debating is more than that. It requires hours and hours and hours, tens of hours, depending upon the debate and the circumstances, maybe hundreds of hours of preparation time, so that you are a good representative of your theological position. And if you're a Christian debating a non-Christian, we want to be good representatives of the Lord as well. So there is a lot of preparation that goes into that. I mean, so much so, not even just simply intellectual arguments, but character development as well. It really takes someone who's mature in character to be able to stand up on a stage, present the arguments, but remain composed when someone is, say, attacking Jesus, maybe through ad hominems and whatnot. It all depends on the type of debate and format. And so, yes, debate can require more than mere intellectual arguments. It can require things, virtues of character, patience, being kind and gentle with our opponents. These are virtues that the scriptures speak of. These are fruits of the Spirit. And so that is a whole nother layer required for good debate preparation, something that takes years of maturing to develop, and years of even arguing on the internet is one of the ways I sort of polished my skills. Back in my 20s, I spent a lot of time, debating with people, discussing, but then learning through some of that experience as well, and found how to improve and get better. And so one of the tips that I share, especially for internet debating, is I wouldn't type anything online that I wouldn't say to someone's face. Or I wouldn't email something that I wouldn't say to someone's face. So that's sort of been a guiding principle for me. And so even in times when I'll passionately put out a position on the web in a discussion forum, or send a fierce email at someone, those are the sorts of things that I might do in person to that person. I might say to that person. Okay, so this upcoming debate, what is this about? Well, on Friday, yes, this Friday, I will be debating on Romans 9, and the subject question is does Romans 9 teach corporate election? That's the debate question that Mr. Sean Luke and myself will be debating. You can find Sean and his materials at Anglican Aesthetics on YouTube. And it'll be an interesting conversation. The debate will be here at Defenders Media. We've got a meeting space actually behind me. Behind this wall, there's a space that can seat 40 to 50 people. And we'll be live streaming at Veracity Hill right here at this channel on YouTube. So if you don't yet, you can subscribe. If you want to attend the event in person, you can go to veracityhill.com/events. Click on the event there. And you can sign up to come in person. It costs $5. I hope that won't put you under, but we do want to cover the cost of cookies and drinks. And 7 to 9 p.m. this Friday. We have the Anglican Fundamentalist who's writing here on YouTube. Ironically, your view is the historic Anglican one, which Anglicans developed, and the Anglican is presenting a Calvinist one. Well, that's interesting. I haven't done enough in-depth historic Anglicanism research to know if the corporate election model is what the historic Anglicans believed. I would be interested if you wanted to send me more resources on that. You can drop a link perhaps in the chat, or send an email to me through the contact form at veracityhill.com. Thank you for that. So yeah, let me talk about this debate. You're going to see some of my materials and resources, and I'll be obviously using some resources here on my desk. I'll show you. You should read Brown on the 17th article, he writes, the Anglican fundamentalist. I've read the articles of religion, and I do come away thinking that they're reformed, capital R, individual predestination, and so that's sort of, it's not my position. I hold to corporate election. I think an individual is elect insofar as they're part of the corporate group. So the debate will have a scope, though. It'll be about Romans 9. And so maybe, we might bring in evidences from other texts, but really we're going to be focusing on Romans 9 to see what it teaches. And I'll point out a few things. I think we're going to find some common ground, but we'll see to what extent on Friday night, Sean and I. So, yes, that's on corporate election. And the doctrine of election has been so divisive for Protestants throughout almost all of Protestant history. When you think of Calvinism and Lutheranism and Arminianism, you have Molinism, you have more recently the traditional Baptist view, which is now called traditionalism. So you've got all these isms, and you have different ways that people try to solve these philosophical and theological quandaries, such as the relationship between divine sovereignty and free will, the relationship between divine grace and human freedom. How does this all play out? How does it work? People have tried to come up with theories, even on, like Molinism I mentioned, is a theory of divine foreknowledge that attempts to smooth out the tension. Open theism has been a more recent approach to try to smooth out the tension between divine sovereignty and human freedom. One of the ways that I try to smooth out this tension is that I simply don't think this paradox, this alleged paradox, exists. Because the way I have read the New Testament, and I'll say this is the way I've always read it. Even as a high schooler, I remember reading Ephesians 1, for example, and interpreting it through the lens of a corporate election model. Now, when I was in high school, I will admit that I thought at that time it was about the Christian church, but I still thought in corporate terms. Now I've since revised my position in my undergraduate days and my master's, second master's. I revised it to, with regard to Ephesians 1, that verses 3 through 11 are about the Jews, and so on and so forth are about the Gentiles. So I revised it, but it's always been a corporate approach. I've always read these texts corporately. And so I've never held to this idea that there is a predetermined list of individuals that God will save. So I've never held to even a Big Ten Arminian sort of view here. Now, some will try to put the corporate election model in Big Ten Arminianism. I don't do that. I think that runs into problems, because Arminianism just becomes a term for non-Calvinism at that point. But this sense of corporate election does away with the paradox. And I'll talk about that more at the debate, perhaps if it gets brought up, but maybe if it doesn't, I should just talk briefly about it now. So on the corporate election model, if God has created a nation, a people group, and we see in the Old Testament how he did that, and he worked with humans and their free will choices to bring that about, and he elected a corporate group, and he includes the Gentiles to then be included in that group. Where is this paradox between divine sovereignty and human freedom, that people can choose to be in the group or not? So I don't sense this paradox, this tension between divine sovereignty and human freedom. Others do, and so they've created these various systems, these isms, to try to smooth out those tensions. And that's why I find myself constantly rejecting a lot of these attempts, because at the end of the day, while this theological exploration that we may do is fun, I really enjoy it, even for positions that aren't my own, at the end of the day, it comes down to the biblical text and how we interpret the texts. I've had plenty of theological discussions and friendly debates over the years, and I've also found that in spite of whatever strong theological arguments that may be presented, some people won't change their mind if they think the biblical text says what they think it says. So at the end of the day, for me, I appreciate being able to engage Calvinists, for instance, on interpreting the biblical text. because I could present all sorts of various theological arguments. For example, that it would be unjust for God to, before the foundations of the world, to create a list of those that will be damned, and he does so for his mysterious divine will, right? That's sort of unjust, it's unfair. Now, Calvinists have a response to this, of course, and they'll cite various passages because they think that objection fails, but it's because they interpret Scripture a certain way. And so we just have to get back to Scripture to look at whether Scripture is being interpreted correctly or not. And I don't think it is when it comes to Calvinism or even Arminianism. So that's what makes this debate on Friday a different one. This is not Calvinism versus Arminianism. This is not Calvinism versus Molinism. This is the corporate election model versus what I think will be an individual or what Sean calls a specified group. So we'll see how much he'll delve into that. I am not sure. I haven't talked to him a ton, and so I'm looking forward to maybe being put on my heels, or I'll be on my toes for sure as I'm listening into his opener, and I'll be taking good notes. But more tips on that about what we should do and how we should prepare for a theological debate. Okay, a couple more announcements. In the middle of September, I'm putting on a men's golf retreat. So if you like to golf, I would love to have you join me in the Northwoods of Wisconsin for some beautiful autumn colors, some autumn temperatures, and playing a lot of golf. So you can learn more about this opportunity by going to veracityhill.com/golf. And you'll see the agenda, an all-inclusive price. It's really affordable. Lodging, food, golf, one price. We'll have a blast. It's about 4.5 hours from Chicago if you're local. If you are coming from Minneapolis, I think it's probably 3 to 4 hours away. But it should be a great weekend event for men to fellowship with each other, to talk theology and apologetics, and to just have fun with each other. So I would love for you to join me for that retreat. Also, before I forget about the debate, did I mention that the debate on Friday will be live streamed to Veracity Hill, 7 and 9 p.m. The team at Defenders Media will be live streaming it, but it will be live streamed to the Veracity Hill platform. Grateful for the DM staff staying later on a Friday for this debate. Okay, there's the golf retreat. Also, my socials on the left there. If you don't yet follow Veracity Hill on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Apologetics 315 is a great apologetics website aggregate resource. And we've got a Veracity Hill channel along with some other video channels there as well. Okay, last announcement. We have a challenge match at Veracity Hill. The board of directors at Defenders Media has graciously provided a $10,000 challenge match. So this is a great opportunity for you to have your support effectively doubled right now in this season of where we are at Defenders Media, including Veracity Hill. Please consider a one-time donation if you don't yet partner with us, or consider becoming a monthly partner with Veracity Hill. If you've enjoyed the video content that's been coming your way, the educational resources, please consider becoming a partner with me. You can go to veracityhill.com/donate to start monthly partnership or offer a one-time gift. Thank you so much for your consideration during this time as we seek to stabilize some of our financial resources. We've had some one-off hits coming to the building. As you may recall, about a year ago, we acquired the building that we've been in, and we've had some one-time expenses pop up that we're really seeking to have some of our funds replenished at Defenders, including, that would again include what we do here with Veracity Hill. Okay, how to prepare for a theological debate. Well, I really have 3 points, like a classic sermon, a 3-point outline. Research, prepare, and beware. So let me talk about these 3 points for today's episode. Research. This one seems like it should be pretty obvious. When you select a theological debate, you don't want to pick something you're unfamiliar with. So you've likely already familiarized yourself with a position and a debate, broadly speaking, that may interest you enough that you want to devote more time to looking into it. If you don't even have a familiarity with the debate, don't accept the invitation. Just take a pass, because as I mentioned earlier, it takes a lot of time to prepare for a debate. It requires a lot of research, a lot of writing, a lot of preparation. So researching, you don't want to just research one side. Like I said, you want to be familiar with the debate, the conversation. You want to know what the different viewpoints are. If you were to simply come at this reading only one side, then you might find yourself unprepared, because it's very important to know the position of your opponent and where your opponent is coming from. It's sort of like a game of chess. You want to be thinking multiple moves ahead. And so in order to think multiple moves ahead, you have to study and research what the different strategies are by your opponent. What are the points that they think? So you have to research not only your position, the best sorts of arguments to defend your position, but also the best arguments for your opponent's position. So that will require researching and reading the other side, people with whom you're going to disagree. This way you will know what sort of arguments are going to be coming. And I'll share a couple examples of this as I tease a little bit about the things I've been doing in my preparation. I don't want to share too much because Sean might get tipped off, to the things that I'll be presenting. I may have just heard one of my DM staffers laugh because that's been an ongoing running joke. Okay, so when you research, you want to get books, journal articles, and more specifically, you want to do your best to find whatever your opponent has written on or a video that they've produced. Take that content. It's very important because you'll get a better sense of the types of arguments that they will bring on that evening or that day, that they will bring during the event. Now, let me give you just a couple books in support of my position. And you'll see some receipts and bookmarks and things. So Chad Thornhill's written a book called The Chosen People, Paul and Second Temple Judaism. And I've skimmed this in the past. I'm working through it a bit more meticulously in the past few weeks as I've been preparing for the debate. And I've got some quotes in my presenter notes for my PowerPoint on Friday. So this is a book, The Chosen People. This book's received a lot of great reviews. A lot of people see this book as sort of being one of the best defenses of corporate election out there in the literature today. I think it's been out for a few years. IVP Academic is the publisher. And let's see, when did this come out? Boy, I hope I don't need to put my glasses on. 2015, 10 years already. Wow. Time does fly. Then another book I have that I've been reading meticulously anyway was Matthew Bates's book, Beyond the Salvation Wars. And so Bates has a chapter on election here because he deals with it in the context of the things he's thinking about. Allegiance to Christ, what does that look like? What are the implications for, say, the doctrine of election? And so he defends a corporate election viewpoint there. Now, as someone who's been familiar with the Calvinism Arminianism debate for a long time now, over 20 years, I was really first introduced to it when I was in high school. So over 20 years, I've been familiar with the debate. I'm well aware of historic voices and perspectives on individual election. And so while I'm not implementing or employing too many quotes from, say, John Calvin, what I've really focused on is using the writings and positions of my opponent. And I've put that into my opener. And also I've got some materials in my section for the rebuttal, which I'll kind of point out a little bit here in a few moments so you can see that. So that's been more of a focus in terms of the other side of the debate. So, and as I mentioned, there may be some common ground between Sean and myself. So I'll be interested to see where the conversation goes on Friday night. Okay, I've taken my eye off the comments here, but I see that we've got Amateur Night and the Anglican Fundamentalists. They're having a conversation. Glad you're having fun. Knight says, let's go Bates. Yes, I would love for Matthew Bates to share the video of the live stream defending the corporate election model. Sean has been a critic of Bates on election specifically, and so I've used this Substack post of his to kind of see where Sean's at. What do I think the points will be in his opening speech, and so that helps me prepare for my rebuttal. Not just my opener, but my rebuttal as well. Where do I think Sean's going to come at this perspective? So research. So yes, you want to read books, journal articles, scour the web for what your opponent is going to present. And then, as I had also mentioned earlier, there's this sort of character aspect of researching and preparation really as well. Not everybody is cut out for public debates. And for people who want to do that, it does take a lot of patience, being kind and gentle. Now, in the case with Sean, I've actually known Sean for a really long time. We were Facebook friends, and then through just strange circumstances, I think he was a Wheaton College student at the time, maybe, or young 20s, I'm not sure exactly. I met him at Menards in an aisle. He came up to me and says, "Are you Kurt Jarris?" And I said, "Yeah," and I didn't recognize him. He was taller than I thought he would be because I only knew him from Facebook. We had some combos over the years in theological Facebook groups. So, yes, boy, how did I get off on that tangent? I've already forgotten. Well, so research. So for Sean and I, we've kind of, we've been friends, and so this will be sort of easier than, say, if I were debating, say, Bart Ehrman, for example, or someone that I didn't know, was a complete stranger with. That would be different. You would have to sort of, continue with the character development just to have these good virtues. All right, so that's sort of it for research. Fairly self-explanatory. Preparation. Now, here's one where people have some different tactics and approaches. Some people will type out their opening speech, and so they may end up reading off word for word, like a script at the debate. Others may just ad-lib it. I have watched a number of Bart Ehrman debates, and he's got no notes. He's working off the top of his head, and now he might have an outline that he's prepared, but he gets up and he walks around on stage. He's not stuck behind a podium, behind a piece of paper, like you might see some guys at debates. And so Bart kind of, he's got this persona on stage, and some people do, they are entertained by it in sort of the classical sense of entertainment. And it's engaging, and I think that's why Bart has seen some success, is because of his approach to public speaking. And so what would require to prepare for that is something different than someone who's typing out a speech. Now, in previous debates I've done, I did type out my opening speech. I can think of the debate I did in 2020 against Douglas Wilson on whether God decreed, what was the title? God decreed all evil, something like that. And then I think I also wrote out my opener for my debate on semi-Pelagianism and the Gallic monks on, I think that was the Gospel Truth channel also. But for this debate, I haven't scripted out my speech. Instead, I'm using a PowerPoint, not technically a PowerPoint, it's a Prezi. And so that's been new. There's been a learning curve for me there. But I wanted some slides that were a bit more engaging, a bit more animation to do than just a simple PowerPoint. So that's how I've been preparing. But why don't I go ahead and share some of these things? And so I'll jump over to that, and then I'll share what else I've done. So here you can see, as I make this full screen, for me, some of this might be cut off because my head in the live stream. But here you can see sort of what's called an overview slide. This is Prezi.com. They've got a free plan, I believe, so that's what I'm on because I'm not going to pay for the monthly subscription for something that I might use once a year or so. So the debate question is there in the center. Does Romans 9 teach corporate election? And you can see I've created different, what they call frames. And there are main points, and then there are points within points. And so let me give you one example. We'll jump ahead. So one thing that I'll say in my debate, let me zoom in on frame 7 here, is that I believe with the corporate election model in Romans 9 to 12, that... let's see here. If the Prezi's not popping up, maybe I can... Let's see here. Well, let me talk about this. The genealogical pathway. And maybe we'll try to get this screen up. Let's try this. Might have to double check my display. Gabe's telling me we've got trouble with the Prezi. Let's go to displays. And Gabe, let me know if this will work. Mirror? Okay, Gabe, are we good there? Okay, he says he's got it now. All right, so just had to mirror. Okay, so genealogical pathway. Sorry for that hiccup there. So Romans 9 to 12. Why does Paul mention this? Well, about the genealogical pathway, right? It's because what I think Paul is arguing is that God has a special plan in the history of salvation. And so he brings about the Messiah through a bloodline, a lineage, through whom the salvation of the world comes to. And the salvation of the world includes not only Jews, but Gentiles. So that's the way I see Paul making this argument. And I've got this little icon my designer made. But then where this leads here, this sort of a sub-point in a point, is to a passage from Anglican Aesthetics, from Sean. And this is, let me read for you, because as I was talking about research, this is where I'm using a relevant quote of his to prove my point. So I'm using him to prove the point that I believe. Sean, I'll say the word admits. It's probably not entirely fair to him because this is part of his model. He adds more here. But Sean writes, hence it's true that strictly speaking, God elects Jacob to be the one through whom the Abrahamic promise goes forth into the world and not Esau. The immediate sense of election here is the designation of who carries forth the promise. Boom! That's my position. And that's only my position. That's all Paul means here. There's nothing more beyond it. Now, for someone like Sean, he does think there's more to it. He does believe that there's, in his specified group model, that there's individuals that are chosen. I'll save some of my comments for that for Friday. But the point here is that for this specific slide, the position I hold and the research that I did in looking up his views, I'm able to use in the relevant time of my opener, because I'm able to use my opponent's words in support of my point. I think that's particularly strong when you try to persuade your audience, because you're showing how even your opponent believes a certain aspect of, and in this case, a large aspect of the viewpoint that you defend. So that would be a case of how you might use your opponent's writings within your opening speech. Now, in terms of preparation, let me get back to the overview. I have these main frames, and then I have this little rebuttal section. And the rebuttal section will have more points that I think Sean is going to bring up on Friday. So I have the things I want to say and argue in my opener, and some of them may be revisited during the rebuttal period, or cross-examination perhaps, or during the closing speech. But the rebuttal period is an opportunity because it will occur after Sean. I'll be going first, then Sean, and then I'll have a chance to rebut his opener. And so I am trying my best. I need to still edit some of the colors here to fit with the Veracity Hill scheme. I have until Friday, okay? I've got a few days here. I'm anticipating points of his, and you can see one here. I'm trying to be humorous. Click in emergency. I'm not going to click it. I'm not going to show you what's behind that point. There are some, well, I won't even say. Okay, so like the empty set objection. Boy, I really don't even want to click here because Sean might watch this. But I could see him bringing up these objections to my position. So you want to be prepared. So preparation includes not only like writing out your opening speech or creating a PowerPoint, but prepare for the arguments. So you're going to, have an opener, then your opponent's going to respond. His opener might include some rebuttal points. It might not. It might just be a positive case for his model. So he might not yet attack your opener, your position. But when he does, you want to be ready. So you want to anticipate. You want to be a couple moves ahead. Think, what will my opponent say? And then how will you respond to your opponent? But then go another layer after that. So you say something, your opponent's going to attack it. You're going to say this. Then think, what will my opponent say even to that? That way you're multiple layers deep in the conversation. So that way you'll be prepared. When that audience is listening, they want to know that you've thought about this, you're well prepared to dig deep and for whatever point or subpoint you're conversant in the literature, or you're able to hold your own on how to interpret that passage. You might even say, well, hey, let's look at the Greek. Was that translated properly? I could see some issues of Greek translation being brought up in the debate. So that requires, say, using various Greek interlinear or lexicon, various research language tools, as we might call them in the scholarly community. I'm not fluent in Koine Greek. I'm not the smoothest reader of it, but I have the tools available that I can look into the language as a research language. And so I can anticipate certain words being brought up. I think that, for example, Hebrews 12:17 might get raised about Esau and the ability or inability to repent, what that might look like. So I could foresee that. So that would come up. And you might also, in your rebuttal, press your opponent on issues that you think he might fail to address in his opener. That would be of benefit to your position. So the preparation time would require, again, not just like writing out your opening speech, but at the least doing an outline. You might have a visual aid, such as a PowerPoint, or in this case, I've shown you my Prezi, or I've just given you a little overview of the Prezi. And this has already taken hours, tens of hours to work on over the previous weeks. So one other thing that I do, and I'll go back to my PowerPoint now, and hopefully Gabe won't hang my head over whether this will work or not. But let me show you. So here on this slide, hopefully you can see it. You can see this time here, not the 12:35 p.m. that was earlier today, but the 16:31. So I timed my opening speech. Now, what we have on the agenda is 15 minutes for opening speeches. That means I am 91 seconds over in my practice round. So I need to cut. I need to cut some material. Thankfully, I thought I was going to go more over than that, like 18 or 20 minutes. So I don't have too much that I need to cut. And I might find ways to cut just material altogether. I might find ways to condense points together. I might read less of Romans 9. I have some of those on my slides where I'm just reading the text of Romans 9. I might decide to cut some of that out just for the sake of simplicity. So that those sort of areas of cutting should be able to help me trim my opener down to 15 minutes. And I'm going to do my best to be within 15 minutes, give or take a few seconds. So I try to be a bit more polished on that, because you don't want to over-prepare. It's good to over-prepare, but you can't have too much material in your opener because you may be cut off. And so you risk not being able to say your conclusion. You might be in the middle of your third or fifth point and donezo. That's it. Your time is up. No more opportunity for repentance. Ooh, that's an Easter egg right there. Hebrews 12:17. No more opportunity. Your time has run out. And so you don't get to share with the audience why your arguments lead to the conclusion that it does. So that's why it's important to make sure in your preparation that you practice, you get it down to the time, and you might even do this with a rebuttal. That's a little harder to do because in the event, in the debate, you might hear things that you didn't anticipate, so you have to prepare for that. And there are ways of note-taking that you can try your best to categorize the arguments that your opponent is raising. You don't want to make notes for just little tit-for-tat points. Oh, he said this, but that was just too vague, and you don't want to be pedantic in your reply, but you want to hone in on the big arguments first as a category so that the audience can understand, you understand your opponent, and then where in these points supporting that big argument your opponent fails or falters, or however you want to phrase it or look at it. So this is where my third point comes in. The third point is to beware. So beware of what your opponent's going to say. In the debate itself, you want to be on your toes. Listen carefully, take good notes. Don't just sit and ignore what your opponent is saying. You have to listen up. You have to listen up. So you want to be aware of the rebuttals, the possible objections that are coming, maybe even the Q&A. You might find questions from the audience, ones that you hadn't anticipated. So that's where the preparation comes in as well. You want to have a broader understanding of the subject matter. You might get a question, hey, well, Romans 9 is about individual election because in Ephesians 1, Paul says this. Well, hold on a second. How do we know that that's what Ephesians 1 means? Well, now you have to be prepared to go on and be presenting in a coherent interpretation of Ephesians 1. To say, look, I don't agree with that interpretation, and here's why. Mystery revealed to the universal church is awkward in Ephesians 1. I think it's verse 7 or 9. We who were the first to hope in Christ, you also believe. These are pronouns, pronoun groups, right? So on and so forth. I've already gone into talking about Ephesians 1. So you just have to beware of what might be coming your way. But also there's a second meaning I have here for beware. And this one is not just sort of a tip. It's not merely a tip, but this is a personal one as well for me. Beware of the consequences. With public debates like this, I find myself putting my own beliefs out there for the world, and this could jeopardize speaking opportunities, teaching opportunities at churches or universities. You might, in some figurative sense, be digging your own grave when you present publicly on a topic, because the internet is forever. And so I've even interviewed the adjunct at schools where I was ultimately turned down over some things I said in a podcast interview that's available on YouTube. And it's not because I disagreed with what I said. I agreed with it. I actually thought that it wouldn't be an issue given that I looked over the statement of faith. It wasn't a problem. But for their review of types, they turned me down. So these things can come back to sort of bite you from possible opportunities. At the same time, we do need to plant our flags sometimes. We need to say, look, this is what I think Scripture is teaching, and be willing to defend it. So that's sort of up to each and every one of us. What are the issues that we want to fight for, and where we stand, and where we're willing to go publicly and defend that? So I'm fully aware that a debate like this on the doctrine of election could come back to might lead to some good opportunities, but it might prohibit other opportunities from happening. And that's just sort of the nature of the beast, I suppose. So you should be aware of the consequences of the positions that you may find yourself publicly defending. So beware on two accounts. One, for the debate itself, beware of what your opponent might say or a question that would come from the audience, but beware of the consequences of the position you're taking. Anglican fundamentalist, absolutely correct. Stating the truth will get you suppressed and sidelined. Yeah, well, other people might not think it's the truth. So, we want to have this fair dialogue and even understand other people. So we might see that the other side is having the best of intentions, even if we think they're making a mistake. And we just have to learn to live with that. And these people can be very well intended, and it can be hurtful to us. But we are, I think, still obviously called to love everybody. So what does it look like to love people that have hurt us, even if they don't know it? Sometimes you just have to carry that hurt, give it to God, and move on and move forward. So there will be other opportunities. So you just keep pressing on. So that'd be my advice there. There was another question that came up here, and we might dig into some passages that pop up. I've already lost it in my feed, though. I need to go over here to YouTube to find it. It was from Amateur Night, I think. Let's see here. How much time do you plan on spending in 1 Peter 2? That's where I spend most of my time when discussing corporate election. So I'll be fully transparent, and now you're going to force me to brush up on 1 Peter 2. I wasn't planning on spending much time at all. My opener is largely focused on Romans 9. Now, I throw in some other passages. Obviously, we're dealing with Old Testament passages here. So when you talk about Jacob and Esau, you talk about Pharaoh, you talk about powder in the clay. These are all references to the Old Testament. So I am going back there, and I suspect some of the disagreement that I'll have with Sean is about how to interpret how Paul's using these images, these references? Is he using them in a way that's consistent with the Old Testament, or is he giving an additional or new meaning? That might come up in our conversation. I have seen that sort of approach from Calvinists. Again, I don't know if Sean's going to do this specifically, but I've seen some Calvinists use that. I have read John Calvin argue regarding Romans 3 that Paul treats Old Testament passages as if he had written them for the first time. As in, Paul just sort of lifts these phrases out of the OT. Romans 3 is about no one does good, no one seeks God, so on and so forth. And I think that what I call this disassociation hermeneutic is just a maverick approach to understanding Paul in his Jewish context. The sense that Paul gives new meaning to the same words we see in the Old Testament, I just find highly unlikely. And rather that there is an association between Paul's intended purpose and the Old Testament purpose. And I think that association is consistent with the original meanings. So we might find ourselves delving deep into the hermeneutics here and even hermeneutical philosophy on how to understand those passages. So I will have to now brush up on 1 Peter 2. Thank you for that point there. And hope we'll see if what that might say about corporate election and what might be of use for me in my opener. So again, as I showed you, I've already hit 16:31 for a 15-minute opener. So I will need to cut various things. So we'll see how much I need to cut and how much I need to add. So that's sort of what I do in terms of debate prep. Of course, it should go without saying, but prayer is very important. You want to pray in preparation. You want to pray at the event for a theological debate. You want God's truth to come out. And you want the conversation to be done in such a brotherly manner between two Christian men, or a sibling relationship if it's a female debating. And you want to show the love of Christ in that event. There have been events where it doesn't go that way. Even when you think about Protestant history, it hasn't been the cleanest with regard to religious violence, for example. And I know that gets into the relationship of religion and politics and all that, but it hasn't been the cleanest. And so in a world, in a ever-growing secular world like ours, it's really important, I think, for us to play down these denominational differences and play up our points of agreement while still having an enjoyable time for theological exploration together. So those are sort of my tips, advice, personal practices as well for how to prepare for a theological debate. Yeah, there's my practice round was 1631. I'll likely do another attempt tomorrow or Thursday before the real opener. I haven't debated this subject before on corporate election. I think I've done some teaching on it with Veracity Hill. I've probably engaged on Facebook comments, but first time doing a debate on this one. Oh, also, it's the first time that I am doing an in-person professional debate. So of all the debates that I've participated in, they have been on the radio, they have been on the internet, but this is the first time it'll be sort of in person together. And I look forward to that. I mean, I think I did like a mock debate when I was in college. I took a debate class, which was just such a blast. Too much fun. I aced that class. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Also, hey, that reminds me when I'm thinking of my college class, one thing you had to do was pick a side you disagreed with, and you had to defend that position. So if you really wanted to do some hardcore preparation, you could prepare an opener for the model you disagree with. Now, in the internet lingo, you want to steel man, not straw man, your opponent. So you want to find the strongest argument for that position. So if you really wanted to go full throttle, you would do that type of thing. For this debate, I'm not willing to do that. But I think I've known this debate long enough that I've seen so many different interpretations of Romans 9 from Calvinists, Arminians, so on and so forth, for how to understand this, that I don't really need to construct an opener from the other side. And Sean's view even is a little different than I think a traditional Calvinist or certainly at least neo-Calvinist interpretation, so newer in how they would interpret Romans 9. So I've really just tried to focus on what Sean is going to argue. So it's been helpful that he's written some things out there on the web, whereas I feel like he might be at a disadvantage. I don't think I've written too much on the corporate election model, but I did share with him the different positions and the authors that I would sympathize with. So let's see here. Let me look over the comments here one last time. Oh yes, these guys are having a convo, Anglican fundamentalist and amateur knight. So glad that you're enjoying each other. I would love your tips and thoughts on how to prepare for a debate. What do you do for preparing for a theological debate, if you do, or maybe you stay away? Maybe you've considered some of the pieces of advice I've offered here today. I would love to hear from you. Please use the contact form at veracityhill.com. Well, that's really all I had prepared for today, just sharing how I've been preparing for the debate. Most of my time over the previous weeks have been gearing up for this debate, so I've been doing my research. I've been creating the Prezi PowerPoint. The slide deck is, I think, the more contemporary cool term. And so I've been focusing my energies on that. Next week, I will be doing a review of the debate. I will take the video and kind of comb through it, and we'll play some clips perhaps. And I look forward to kind of being surprised. I'm positive there's something I'm overlooking from Sean's position. So I excitedly await hearing his opener and seeing how the table will be set then for our rebuttal periods and cross-ex and conclusion. Anglican fundamentalists will be praying for you both. I wish I could go in person. Well, you're welcome to. You can fly in to Chicago. After all, the event tickets are only $5 to cover cookies and drinks. So the $5 isn't going to put you under. Maybe a plane ticket might. But it'd be great to meet you. And Sean is a hardcore Anglican, so he and you might have plenty to talk about, Anglican fundamentalist. I'll have to look into what you said about the corporate election, although I read the 39 articles differently than I think you might. So, yeah, that's an interesting subject matter all its own. That's another debate topic on just focusing in on Anglican beliefs. But this just gets right to the core of the biblical text, Romans 9. I think Romans 9 and Ephesians 1 are the two mega passages on election. Those two passages. Yes, there are others. There's some verses in John 6. There's in Acts, there's a stray verse. There are some other verses, smaller verses here or there that might be plucked out. I mean, I think they're all plucked out of context for those that think they're about individuals' eternal salvation. But I really view Romans 9 and Ephesians 1 as these big passages. And if, as I understand it, if those can be understood as corporate election, the case for individual election really is small. It's tiny. Because a reframing of Ephesians 1 and Romans 9 will simply deflate the other small remaining proof texts, if you will. And proof texting is really just a terrible way of using what the text says and giving it the meaning you want it to have. And I've seen a number of Reformed confessionals that do this. They'll cite a verse to support their theological doctrine, and you look up the verse and you wonder how do they get that meaning from that text to support that doctrine? It really is a stretch sometimes. And again, a lot of this gets back to a hermeneutical statement that I continue to use because I find it so helpful. Mary had a little lamb. Mary had a little lamb. Such a simple sentence. You can diagram the sentence grammatically, right? It doesn't tell you what it means. That's a jab at James White's tactics and approach, by the way. Because you can do a grammatical analysis on that sentence, Mary had a little lamb, and it will not tell you what the words mean. The context tells you what the words mean. Was Mary a human and she gave birth to a baby? So the lamb is it's a figurative lamb. It's a real human. Or is Mary a sheep, gave birth to a little lamb? Or is Mary a human having some lamb for dinner? Mary had a little lamb. The sentence is the same, all three different contexts. So what does the text mean? We do the same sort of thing with Scripture. The text says what the text says. Now we can get into what the text says, say, in the Greek or the Hebrew and translations. There are some translation issues that pop up from time to time. But the text says what the text says. So what does it mean? That is the question. So what does the word election mean in Romans 9, for example? And then what is Paul's argument? What is the whole point of why he's writing what he's writing? We don't have that other side of the conversation. We don't have the letter from the Romans to Paul. So we don't know exactly what points he is responding to. And so that's why we're piecing together and trying our best to interpret what the other side was looking for. That helps us better understand why Paul wrote what he wrote and what he meant by the words that he wrote. Okay, let's see here. Do you have email contacts somewhere? Best right now to use my website. I'll reply to you, but you can go to veracityhill.com, use the contact form, Anglican Fundamentalist. Plane tickets a lot, though, he writes. Well, it depends where you are. If you're in the Midwest, maybe driving range. I don't know where you're located. We're in Chicago, centrally located in the United States. Sometimes tickets can be cheap. $200, $250 round trip. That can be very affordable. Other places might not, if you've got to catch a second leg, for example, on your flights. N.T. Wright also did a lot on this topic. Have you read much about the new perspective on Paul? Yes, I have. I will be trying my best not to get into that, and I will also be trying my best to stay away from justification, since this is a debate over the concept of election. Now, of course, they are related, and I'm pretty sure Wright will come up in some way, maybe even just cross-examination. But I'm going to try my best to argue for my position in such a way that a layman who hasn't read the scholarly literature, and I've got shelves of books on Calvinism and justification, presuppositional apology. I'm pointing to my left because that's where my Calvinism bookcase is, basically. So I've read quite a bit on this stuff over the decades that I've been interested in it. But the argument, the way I'll be presenting the arguments, I don't want to get too scholarly for people because I want people to be able to lay out the case themselves in the conversations that they have with their friends at church in their adult Sunday school classes. I think anybody who opens up to Romans 9 should be able to clearly communicate how they come to the corporate election model, and they shouldn't be able to depend on so many scholars to kind of prove their point, which can trend into sort of an appeal to authority. So the case I'll be making on Friday should be very accessible for people. I'll be trying my best. So much so that my friend Mark might even find himself listening in, even though he's not much of a deep theology guy. He, of course, loves the basics of the gospel, but going this deep into the theology stuff isn't his cup of tea. But if he could understand it, maybe he would. I don't know. Okay, well, that does it for the show today. Again, those are just my pieces of advice, tips, personal approach to how to prepare for a theological debate. And hopefully I haven't missed anything. And I look forward to Friday's event. And hopefully I won't screw up. There can be pressure, and the internet's forever. So, you want to make sure that you are prepared and just making sure that you're not going to embarrass yourself. And so you want to present the case as strong as you can, keep your composure, respond to the rebuttals, sort of the basics. But to do that, you have to be prepared in many ways, intellectually, with character, so on and so forth. Should be a lot of fun. And then I look forward to next week as I review the debate. Maybe there are spots that I thought I could have been stronger on, and I won't know those until, say, Friday night. Hopefully I won't lose sleep over it. All right, that does it for the show today. I am grateful for the continued support of our patrons. Those are people that just chip in a few bucks each month. Please consider becoming a patron and partner with me today at veracityhill.com/donate. I'm also grateful for the partnerships that we have with our sponsors. They are Defenders Media, Apologetics 315, and Rethinking Hell. I want to thank our technical producer, Gabe, for all the fine work he does. He's going to be, if not today, tomorrow, tearing down actually some of the equipment that we have here in my office, and it's going to be moved over to this other room since we'll be live streaming over there. So thank you to Gabe for the work that he does at Defenders and for Veracity Hill. I want to thank the rest of the team there at Defenders: Sophia, Dante, Mark, Beth, Kyle, Peter, Kevin. We've got a little crew of workers, laborers. Very grateful for them week in, week out, and I know they put up a lot with me, so I'm grateful for their patience. Okay, and last but not least, I want to thank you, especially Amateur Knight and the Anglican Fundamentalist. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. And for anybody who's watching later or after the fact listening on podcast, I want to thank you for watching or for listening in as we're striving for truth on debate preparation.
This has been Veracity Hill, a viewer and listener supported program. For more resources, including past shows, visit veracityhill.com.